As university organist at Princeton University, I had the elbow room to engage in a big project. This is something that most organists might want to do, but simply couldn't do because they didn't have the time. I did have the time, and one day, driving home, I remember exactly where I was. I had the idea to learn all six of the Vierne symphonies. This was over 10 years ago at this point, and I formulated a plan to learn all six symphonies in time for his 150th birthday in 2020. And I made this plan to learn basically a symphony every other year, and all of this was in order to perform them at the Princeton University Chapel on his birthday in 2020. And as I was learning them and deciding to play them for other venues, I realized I should document all of this work. And it's for that reason that I've chosen to record them on these six different instruments in the United States. I'm drawn to Vierne because I enjoy the harmonic language that he employs. He is, for me, right at the cusp of highly chromatic music that is also completely identifiable as being in a key. He hasn't gone off the cliff yet into writing music that it's difficult to identify a tonality, and he is right at that cusp for me. He takes it right. He lived in the sweet spot for me. I wanted to record these symphonies on organs that had a French sound. These are organs that are built to play French music more authentically than other music. And I chose these instruments both because of the instrument themselves, but also because of the acoustic into which they speak. It's always great to have a receptive acoustic to make the organ sound wonderful. But the reason I chose these specific instruments was because each has a French. Each leans French. The outlier is the last symphony, Symphony Number 6, which I recorded on an American classic instrument. And I recorded it at St. Mark's Cathedral in Shreveport on an Aeolian Skinner instrument. This is a completely American instrument. But I recorded it there, I recorded that symphony there because that symphony was written after Vierne toured America. And he was exposed to all these American instruments that he played on this tour. And he called for in that symphony sounds that only American instruments would have, not French instruments. So I thought it appropriate to play that symphony on an American classic instrument instead of a French instrument. I recorded Symphony Number 1 at St. Ignatius Loyola in New York City. It's a Mander instrument, but again, with a French style, French sound. I recorded Symphony Number 2 at Bryn Mawr Presbyterian Church, a Rieger instrument. Again, not a French builder, but a French instrument, inspired by French instruments. I recorded Symphony Number 3 at St. Matthew Cathedral in Washington, D.C., a Lively Fulcher instrument, an American builder, again, but a French instrument, a really French-sounding instrument, and it speaks into a room with just very wet acoustics. Symphony Number 4, I recorded at Broadway Baptist Church in Fort Worth, Texas, a Cassavant instrument. Cassavant is a Canadian firm, And this is a very French instrument. Symphony 5, I recorded at Rice University in Houston, Texas. This instrument was built by two different firms, Fisk and Rosales. And it is built to play French music better than any other music. And it had all the right sounds in all the right places. It was an embarrassment of riches. And Symphony Number 6, I recorded at St. Mark's Cathedral in Shreveport, Louisiana. An Aeolian Skinner instrument, absolutely superbly voiced, just a magnificent instrument. Going from organ to organ, of course, there are many aspects that are common, but organs, more than any other instrument, are different from one another. There are 88 keys on a piano. A flute is going to still have the same number of keys, but an organ is going to sound totally different from one to another. Vierne has indicated in the score what in general I should use. Of course, he knew that this would sound different on different instruments as well. But he also employed what was really kind of a formula for most of his music and most of the music from the French Romantic era. And that was to use a certain, combination in what we call the swell, which is the stops that are behind in a box that you can control the volume, and a certain combination on the other various divisions of the instrument. As I went from instrument to instrument, recording these different symphonies on these different instruments, I wanted to be true to what Vierne had in mind, knowing, of course, that it wasn't going to sound like the instrument he knew, which was Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. But as a composer, he knew that his music would be played in other places. I still wanted to be true to the sound that he would have had in mind. So it takes quite a bit of time to figure out, as you're working through that particular symphony on that particular instrument to record, to be true to Vierne's aesthetic, but also bring what this organ does best into the spotlight, and also, of course, what I feel as an artist that Vierne might have supported bringing forth in his music on this instrument. So I did my best to do this. It takes quite a bit of time, but each symphony was therefore its own creation on that particular instrument at that time. My mother's side of the family grew up in rural Indiana, and she was the only one who moved away. I grew up in Rock Island, Illinois. But each summer we would go back to her family's farm and spend a good deal of the summer there, 2 or 3 weeks. One of these trips, we visited her brother, who lived outside of Indianapolis, and as a way to keep as an entertainment, as something to do one day, we went into Indianapolis and went to the Paramount Music Palace. This was an old theater that had been renovated and now sold pizza and beer, but the theater organ was still there. It had been completely tricked out, and they would have shows where the theater organist would play, 30 minutes at a time. And I was about 12 years old at this time, and I was just enthralled with all the lights flashing. Whenever he used the piano stop, a light would shine on the piano that was hanging up on the wall. That whenever you used the marimba stop, a light would shine on that, and then we would hear the marimba. it was very visually exciting, but also orally exciting. I remember the bass sound from the pipes. So it was a theater organ that first ignited this love of organ for me, and it was the mechanical aspect of it. To a 12-year-old boy, I wanted to do all that. I wanted to make all of that happen. So I told my mother that I wanted to take organ lessons. I had been taking piano lessons already. And so we went back to Rock Island, and she approached the organist of the church that we attended, and the organist there said she'd be happy to teach me what she knows. And that's how it started. To her credit, she taught me, her background was not in organ, but she taught me what she knew, the basics. And then she said, I've taught you all I know, go find another teacher. And I did. And around that time, I was getting ready to go to college. And so I was able to audition at Westminster Choir College and attended there as a piano and organ major first for the first 2 years, and then I dropped my piano degree. I still love the piano, but I finished with my organ degree. As a student at Westminster Choir College, I really began to fall in love with the organ, and it was an all-consuming love. I knew in high school that I would be an organist. I knew that I would be a musician. I really thought that I was going to be an organist. I didn't really think that I would be a concert pianist. So I think from an early age, I knew that I would be doing what I'm doing. And I'm grateful to have not gone through the usual teenage angst of trying to figure out what I'm going to be when I grow up. I went to Westminster. I went then to Eastman, and organ was at this point front and center, absolutely the only thing in my life. And I learned from great teachers along the way, most of whom, the overarching thing that I learned from these two great teachers that I had, undergrad and grad, was to become a teacher of myself. They taught me how to teach myself, how to listen critically, how to learn new music, how to be true to the composer, what the composer wanted, and yet be artistic. And it's been a lifetime of continuing to evolve down that path, to try to better myself at every turn, lots of practice, lots of listening, lots of critical listening to myself. And I've been able to, I started off as an assistant organist at in a very well-developed music program in Denver, Colorado. And I then became the director of music at a church in Washington, D.C. I was in charge of everything. And I then was able to come here to the Princeton University Chapel. Each of these, I believe, has been a step up and a step forward down this path of continuing to evolve in as a musician, as an artist, and to continue to try to be better the next time, always. There have been a few career mountaintop experiences that I've had. One was right here at the Princeton University Chapel, and that was to play for the commencement ceremony of Westminster Choir College, my alma mater. I was deeply honored to be asked to participate in that way. Another real memorable moment for me was when I was living in Washington, D.C. I spent my 33rd birthday playing the organ part to Mahler's Eighth Symphony at the Kennedy Center, and the chorus was the Washington Choral Arts Society, and the conductor was Norman Scribner. It was an amazing experience. Another career high point was playing a solo organ concert at Verizon Hall in Philadelphia. This would have been, several years after the organ had been installed, and they were highlighting its existence there with an organ series, and I was deeply honored to be asked to play. And at that concert were people from my college days at Princeton. People from Washington, D.C. came up to Philadelphia to hear me play, and of course people from Princeton that are currently in my life came to hear me play. And it was a wonderful gathering of friends, old and new. My hope for this album is that people will hear 6 different venues, 6 different acoustics, 6 different instruments, 6 different symphonies, and the beautiful music of Vierne. There's everything from deep despair to unbridled joy in this music. Humorous points, beautiful points, lyrical, strong, majestic, dramatic. Everything is there. And it's my hope that everyone will hear all of that and enjoy the variety of sounds, the variety of the music, the variety of the instruments in these 6 Vierne symphonies. If you're watching this video, I hope you will purchase the recording. And if you're inclined, please let me know your thoughts. I hope you enjoy it.